I have a new topic that you guys have never heard before, a story you haven't heard, and I hope it has value for you guys. And I'll tell a bit of it, and then I'd encourage some feedback at the end and see what have you guys done maybe in your entrepreneurial struggle, some of the unexpected ups and downs. So we're here in the Coach U Show, part of Startup Club, and Jeffrey's my co-host. He's amazing. He's the CMO of Paul.com, and he is a man of many skills, and so glad to have Jeffrey here.
Thank you, Dennis. Clearly, my reputation exceeds myself.
So this room is recorded, so you can play the replay if you like, and it's turned into articles and related content in Startup.club. So if you have things to say, feel free. Just make sure it's of value for other people that may be listening or watching. It's a devastating thing to have a co-founder die on you. It was my friend Chris Rummel. He was my best friend, and we traveled the world, and we built software together. He worked at Lockheed Martin for a bit before we decided we'd become software entrepreneurs. This is 25 years ago. And he was so good as a pilot and software engineer that he actually trained Mohammed Atta, who was one of the pilots that flew into the Twin Towers, if you can believe that or not. And he said, I know that guy. I trained him. He only cared about taking off. He didn't care about landing. That was odd. But this guy was such a meticulous engineer that we decided we were going to create a company that would be virtual coaching. And back then, you had Polar as a heart rate monitor, and it would graph what your heart rate was and how far you ran. And we would take this data, download it, and put it into our program that would calculate your fitness level, your VO2 max, what we thought your base level of fitness was. We'd project, let's say you ran a 10K in 39 minutes, we'd project your marathon split or project your mile PR, project what your 80%, your VO2 max would be, what your aerobic threshold would be. And then as you input your different training runs, it would adjust your training plan. And we ran this by other athletes in Stanford, by the folks who run the Chicago Marathon, who were going to use our software, people like Hal Higdon, a lot of the researchers, not the people at Runner's World, but the people who actually do the research. And I scoured the planet for the top athletes that were runners and triathletes and cyclists. I'm friends with Mike Pigg, who you guys may know as one of the original Ironman people. I consulted with Steve Scott, who was the American record holder in the mile, and I was a big time runner back then. And I thought, what would it be like to have someone like a Steve Scott in your ear giving you encouragement, but also saying, hey, looks like your body's a little tired. The last few mile splits that you ran weren't very good. You ought to, tomorrow, instead of an interval workout, you ought to just take 5 miles easy jogging at a 7-minute pace. Or you weren't able to work out the last 3 days and you got a marathon in 87 days, then don't try to run twice yesterday. Here's how we want to adjust. And the system, based on what we know about human physiology, would make these adjustments to your diet, to your strength training, to the running that you had. And we built this amazing piece of software. I still have the wireframes. I don't have the code because when he died, all of that went away and it was so secure and nobody could get into it. So it's forever gone. But we had run so many, I think we ran like 10 marathons together. We qualified for Boston by running the California International Marathon in under 3 hours and just did all kinds of crazy things. And part of the reason, you guys don't know this, I went to Yahoo was to give him more software engineering experience because he thought, like a lot of us, I'm not good enough. I can't be making world-class software. I need to get more experience. So I said, okay, I'll do this thing at Yahoo, and that way you could also work at Yahoo. And so we did. We both worked at Yahoo and both got a lot of experience. But even though we learned a lot, and that was a great place to be, especially 20 years ago, I look back and I think that wasn't really necessary. We could have just gone full on into building our software, even though having an extra paycheck from Yahoo was nice. It was a trade-off of not being able to build our software faster. And even still today, you look at Nike and the Apple Watch and whatnot, they've still not done a true virtual coaching kind of thing. You have these Run Mapper, Run Keeper, other sorts of tools, but not incorporating what we know about physiology. And there was one day, it was about 4 p.m. on a I think a Thursday, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to be leaving the office now. I'll catch you a bit later tonight. We're going to have Vietnamese because we like to eat at this pho restaurant in Mountain View. If you guys know Mountain View, there's a pho restaurant right off of Main Street." And little did I know that conversation we had was the last time I would have ever talked to him, because 3 minutes after he left the Yahoo parking garage on his motorcycle, going down Matilda Boulevard, a few hundred meters down, a car swiped into him while he was on the motorcycle. He swerved and hit a yield sign that instantly snapped his neck, put him into a coma, and he never recovered from that. And I, to this day, think about how, was it my fault? And a lot of people say, no, Dennis, you can't blame it. Blame yourself because of various reasons. No, the reason he was riding that motorcycle was he wanted to sell his car. So I bought his car off of him. He had a VW Jetta. I gave him 20 grand for it because he needed the money for something else. And I told him, hey, you don't have to, if you need the 20 grand, here it is, whatever. I was already making money doing PPC. I was one of the biggest dating affiliates, if you can imagine. All the dating sites I was running ads. While I was at Yahoo, I was running all these ads on the side. I had so much data. Maybe there's a conflict of interest there or whatever, but I was making all this money. And he said, no, I'm ethical. I need to, pay you for the 20 grand or give you this car. So he rode the motorcycle instead of driving his car. And I think if I had just refused a little bit harder, say, no, you really like this Jetta. This is, or not Jetta. What is the thing? It's a little red Volkswagen that it's sporty. You really should, you should keep the car. I should have pushed a little bit harder, but he insisted. But maybe if that didn't happen that day, he'd still be alive. And when I go to Silicon Valley, I'll make a pilgrimage to the spot where the accident happened. And I remember I'd been there several times because it didn't really hit me. I thought maybe it was a joke. I thought maybe it's like Elvis or like, who knows. But I'd go there and I'd find little pieces of his bike shattered in the gutter. And it reminded me. And I go back to Portland where his mom is, to the Rose Garden, the place that we would go to all the time. And it would remind me of what that was like. And I thought I would never do a startup again because we had put years into building this software. Because we did some work during the day at Yahoo, but then in the evening we worked on our software, and I wanted to launch it to the world. I was so connected in the world of runners and physiologists and people that talked about running and high school track coaches. I came from one of the top programs in athletics, Palos Verdes High School. We had the nation's top women's cross country team, one of the top men's cross country teams. And I thought, you know what? I'll just be an employee at Yahoo, and I've given it my one shot. And I thought I would never recover from that. And I'm curious, have you guys been through this kind of situation where you hit some kind of barrier? It doesn't have to be a co-founder dying in a motorcycle accident, but some situation that at first looks like a disaster, but then later opens up these other doors in ways that you have never imagined. And then the thrill of entrepreneurship, of going up and down. What have you learned? What have you experienced? What encouragement do you have for other people? Because I look at where things are today, 20 years ago, and I can see the arc of my life, just like you can see the arc of your life, and the amazing other people that we get to work with, and the training that we, so instead of just the training for athletes, because back then I'm early 20s, I feel invincible. I think I know everything, and I think that I can run forever and never get old and sick. And now I'm 47, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm almost 50. Holy moly. I wake up the morning after even just walking up the stairs and I have an ache. I see people that they pull a tendon just from standing up or something and not doing some crazy sort of thing. So it reminds me of my mortality. But instead of the training on athletics, we have training on digital marketing. We have training with other people who are awesome entrepreneurs. And I see how I ended up in a place that I think would have been similar. And everything I believe happens for you instead of to you. And things that look bad, if you can reframe it, you realize that there is a lesson in that. And there's something that you can't see ahead. A friend of mine told a story of when this these people are on a train, and the train is going down the tracks and it stops. And everyone's like, why are we stopped here? We're late. We need to hurry up. Why are we stopped at this signal here? And little did they know, is because something else was happening up the track. And the engineers knew, but the passengers didn't. And I feel that we are all trains on a track where Sometimes the track up ahead is busy, or we're taking the long way because the path we would have been on was dangerous and would have been we avoided something that would have been catastrophic. But I bring this story up, this personal story that I had to share with you, that things that appeared tragic at the time, with the passage of time, everything becomes doable. Everything, in the context of time, you realize you're a blip on this planet, and there are so many other people. There's so many other opportunities that you might grieve a co-founder, you might grieve a business, you might grieve a project that didn't work out, but there's always another one. You never think at the time that there is, but there always is another one. So I want to open up and see, what do you guys think? What inspires you?
Dennis, when I read the topic for tonight and thought about what you were going to share, it didn't even occur to me. But as you told your story, I realized and remembered that I actually had a remarkably similar experience, including involving a motorcycle. This goes back probably close to 15 years ago. I had this idea for an online business that I thought and still think was a really great concept. And I had noodled with it and took it as far as I could go, not being a programmer. And I did some proof of concept stuff, and I had a video explaining it and some really neat stuff. And I ended up partnering with a friend of mine who has said he knew this genius kid who was a brilliant coder, brilliant developer, and let's bring him in and see if we can bring this project to life. So we did. And the three of us created a business, created a partnership, and started working on this project with this really brilliant young kid. He was 20 years old at the time, just was an amazing coder, and just was bringing this idea that I'd been playing with for a few years. He was literally bringing it to life, and it was amazing. And he was doing a great job. And he rode a motorcycle, always came, showed up at the office riding his motorcycle, loved it, always wore a helmet, but he was, careful. And we hadn't launched yet, and he was driving his motorcycle in Boca Raton, 20 years old. And it's very similar to the story you shared. Someone hit him, he went flying, and even though he had a helmet on and a jacket and all the gear, he still was pretty much killed instantly. And it destroyed my friend more than me, even because he had worked with him and knew him for many years since he was a younger kid. But it destroyed me, and it destroyed that project. Like, even though he was 90% done and I probably could have finished it up and launched that business, I couldn't go back to it. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't think about it. And I also stopped riding motorcycles. I had a motorcycle license. I had not a motorcycle, but I had a maxi scooter at the time, 500cc Italian Aprilia scooter that I used to ride on the highway. And I couldn't even look at it or touch it or ride it. And to be honest, I never rode it again. It made me think too much of him and what had happened. And I stopped riding, eventually sold it, and have not personally ridden a motorcycle since. So it's remarkable, as you're telling your story, all this came back to me, and I hadn't thought about it. I think about it every year on his birthday. But yeah, so it didn't kill my entrepreneurial spirit, but it certainly killed that particular project. Even to this day, I don't want to think about it, even though I love the project, because it's just too sad. Yeah, so thanks for making me remember that. But I think, to your point, we wouldn't be here on Clubhouse talking together if we hadn't had the experiences we've had. Everything pushes us forward and pushes us on the path we're on, and we do learn and grow from things, even things that are tragic and sad or fail.
Incredible. It makes us who we are. Jeffrey, what was your friend's name? This 20-year-old.
Now I'm going to embarrass myself and say I'm having an aged brain fart, and because I just,
Because you repress the memory. You don't.
yeah,
Yeah, your brain's trying to protect itself
yeah,
because it doesn't want to remember that.
no. It's like I still get every year, once a year, I get a notice on Facebook because they never get rid of that stuff that it's his
Mm.
birthday. And then I stop what I'm doing and think about it. But it was definitely tragic.
That's why whenever I see a friend with a motorcycle, I tell them, dude, you need to get rid of that motorcycle. Oh, no, I know how to drive. It's the other people that are bad drivers. You should look at my friend Chris and what happened to him. And that's, you never see the old motors. You never see the old guys on the crotch rockets. There's a reason for that. I'd love to hear the stories that you guys have. Maybe something that Jeffrey or I shared inspired you in your journey, and you have something that's encouraging for other people that are on the path of entrepreneurship, which is really hard. I don't think people are willing to acknowledge how hard entrepreneurship is. We're here in Clubhouse and each of us are next to our phones and we're listening and maybe participating, but all of us, we seek to be around other people that are going through similar situations so that we don't feel like we're by ourselves having to tackle this whole beast. And I think having a co-founder is absolutely critical in any kind of company. I don't believe in Elon Musk and the Superman and the idea of this hero that does everything. I think for every great leader, there's a great spouse, there's a great husband or wife that helps make that kind of stuff happen. And when you see, there's a friend of mine who built a company that just traded on Wall Street based on informational signals. And he looked at the divorces. So he would trade on a stock if the CEO was having marital problems or if the kids were in trouble or whatever. And he actually made money in the stock market because he knew that would impact the company's performance. If you think about it, it makes sense. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs neglect their emotional health because they're so focused on the detail, or they feel it's embarrassing to admit that something happened or that they're less than perfect, or to share some kind of sensitive piece of information when they're in a busy conference call, that kind of thing. So I thought I would share my story and as a way to say, hey, it's okay. It's okay in today's world to be who you are in this new space. We had our coaching call 3 hours ago. We have a weekly paid coaching group. And one of our we have a lot of doctors for some reason. One of them was afraid to share her personal life because as a doctor, she's God in a white lab coat kind of thing. And I said, no, you absolutely should. You should let people know that you like donuts, even though it's not good for you. You should tell them about where you live. You should do these kinds of things to humanize yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing that's missing among founders and entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their business. It could be coaches, consultants, experts, doctors, whatever they are. They're so focused on their craft that no one really knows who they are. And this doctor from earlier today, she specializes in things like gut health and stress. And I said, of the executives that you coach, because that's her client base is 40 plus female executives, can they really tell which doctor knows the most about gut health? This you versus some other doctor? She said, no, not really. Okay, then why would they choose you? They choose me because of referrals and my relationships and who I serve. And I said, exactly. So the more you tell your story, the more people can see who your persona is. That when you're treating these executive women are dealing with a different set of situations than some average person who, whatever their situation is. And so you've got to let yourself resonate by telling those stories. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your feedback. Go ahead and hit the hand raise button in the bottom.
And Dennis, just to bring my memory back, it was Raphael, but we called him Raf as my friend. And you're right, I kind of did just block it out, but now it's all coming back.
RIP for Raphael.
Yep. But we learn from all of our experiences. And the one thing that when you lose someone under any circumstances is always a reminder is how precious every moment it is. And I think for entrepreneurs, that's such an important thing to remember because we put so much into the businesses we start. We put almost everything else in our life on hold. And it's important that, of course, you've got to put the work in. It's hard to launch a business, it's hard to bring a job to fruition, but you sure as hell better enjoy the journey and enjoy what you're doing because you don't know when it's going to stop. You don't know when it's going to, and you don't want to look back and say, gosh, I missed all these opportunities while I was trying to build this business. You want to make sure you're building this business and living and enjoying your life.
And isn't that a hard balance? I think about all the things that I want to do. And of course, when you talk to entrepreneurs on their deathbed, you never hear them say, man, I wish I spent another hour in the office. I really regret not doing that. I found a shortcut to both of those. So I taught this class this morning it's a social media professors group. There's a couple thousand professors. It's headed by Dr. Karen Freeberg, who's got the book on social media for professors, at least, that they teach in their schools. And this morning we were teaching about TikTok. So we're teaching all these professors about TikTok and what is it and the ads and how they can teach their kids, even though the kids know more about TikTok. So they think, at least not on the business side, they don't know. And we were talking about how at the big conference we're going to be at in June, and then these training sessions, how these teachers, they want to be able to give back and help their kids. A lot of these universities are starting student run organizations, these agencies. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. Like Dr. Karen Sutherland at the University of the Sunshine Coast, she's got hundreds of these students that are adopting local businesses and applying our training, dollar a day, 1 minute video to thrive in their agencies. And I said, a lot of students on social media are disillusioned with the education system and want to say it's a scam and that anyone can just get on the social media and start being a business person. They don't need to know anything, and you don't need to go to 4 years of school or anything like that. And I said, this right here, what we're teaching is exactly what these kids don't know. And so if they want to make money as influencers, some of my friends, they have 2 million, 5 million followers on TikTok and whatnot, and they're driving Uber because they're broke. So we're teaching these professors how to blend practical, real world, hands on, adopt local businesses and start an agency while you're in school under the auspices of the school, while there's structured education and learning how to communicate and work in groups and write effective proposals and that kind of stuff. And I think, what a cool way where, for me at least, I'm doing something that can make me a little bit of money, not a ton, but I'm also doing something that I really love. So I'm not having to sacrifice one or the other. It's not, oh, I can't wait till Friday because during the Monday to Friday, I'm just like wasting my time waiting for the weekend to get a paycheck and then get drunk and then have to go to work on Monday. Like, I don't even have that. I've been spending the last year basically hanging out with people that I like, whether it has business or not, but it seems like a lot of them have a cool business angle. I was in Utah last week with John Jonas, who's the founder of onlinejobs.ph. He has, hey, Jeffrey, you know how many VAs he has, virtual assistants he has on his site
I,
now?
I think you've mentioned it before, but it was a huge number. I believe it's in the thousands.
I thought it was 1.5. I thought it was like 1.2 or 1.5 million. It's 2 million.
Wow.
Not to say we need to boast about who has the most money or the biggest audiences, but this guy has quietly grown the largest virtual assistant site on the planet. He's got 2 million digital marketing people on his onlinejobs.ph site. And I hung out with him for a few days and we were making videos. And even if we didn't have projects where we're doing stuff together to be able to sell courses and train up VAs, and we have all these courses, you can train up your VA to do video editing or graphics or blogging or using different tools like Descript or like the overdub feature or Jarvis or WordPress. So even if we weren't doing that, I just wanted to hang out with this guy because I think he's really cool. He only works maybe 10 hours a week. He's got 5 kids. His number one priority is his family. I just love seeing that. But then he's very choosy about who he hangs out with. So it's an honor to spend time with him. And I learn from people like this. And at the same time, I'm able to make money, which is cool because we have all these courses that we're sharing revenue on. So that's the kind of stuff where I don't think it has to be an either or. And thus, I guess you're not supposed to mix business with pleasure. But what I found just from hanging out with people who are really successful, that's what they do all the time. Like when I was with Dr. Lyons, who's the founder of Cocoon, the whole oxygen water, which is a whole nother topic to talk about. I got to hang out with the Queen in Malaysia. I got to hang out with these other people who are just really cool. And it's because they had health problems and they had to do the Cocoon oxygen treatment. So Dr. Lyons is able to make money because he invented this technology for these oxygen baths. But we're also hanging out with really cool people. So these are friends and they're business colleagues, and it's not like one or the other. It's just blended together. I was with Naveen Jain. He's the billionaire guy, right? Who's got Viome and he's mining the moon. He's got the license to send rockets to the moon and mine it and all that kind of stuff. And I asked him, hey, so how do you balance all the different things that you have? You have 9 companies you started that all went to $1 billion plus, and you have 2 wonderful kids that are doing amazing things, and you're out doing the speaking circuit and doing stuff with your nonprofits and all this, and hanging out with Richard Branson and playing him in tennis or whatever. How are you balancing all of this? And he said to me, Dennis, there is no balance. There is no such thing as work life balance. Even though he's already made all his money, he's working harder than he ever has. He doesn't get as much sleep as he should. But he said the illusion of balance is that at any point in time, something is a priority, right? your daughter's sick. Okay, you got to cancel all your meetings. Your daughter's sick. Or this one thing happened. We have to go address this emergency or whatever it is. Whatever's the latest priority takes the spot that day. But overall, over time, things are in balance, right? But instantaneously, at any point in time, there's something that's the priority. And I just thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, Dennis, I know Naveen. I once almost came very close to selling a company of mine to him back at the InfoSpace days and ran into him at a conference years later. But that's another story for another time. But I think more than ever, there is no work-life balance. It's life, especially now with people working remotely, working from home. The lines have blurred and everything bends together. And that started to happen with mobile, when all of a sudden, even in the early days of the first RIM BlackBerry pagers, when all of a sudden I could be in the park with my kids on the weekend and texting emails back and forth to people from work on this little pager thing, all of a sudden the lines blurred and everything changed. That's the world we live in. So you need to build a life that works for you, that includes your source of income and your family and the things that you enjoy and get pleasure from. The one thing I will say, Dennis, that I was thinking of just based on going back to the losses and losing a partner is one lesson that we can learn from that, not to do with someone passing away necessarily, but when you're building your business and building your startup, don't have a single point of failure. Like you mentioned that when Chris passed, you didn't have access to all the code, all the great stuff you were working on. And as I think about it, when Ralph passed, I'm in the same boat. I actually, if I wanted to resurrect that business, I have everything he built, but I have no idea how to get to the source code and all the stuff that he used to create it. So as you're building your business, it's important not that you are expecting anyone to pass away tragically, but you want to build your business in a way where if someone does get hit by a truck in the proverbial phrase or get hit by a bus, that the business can still survive. So that's an important consideration that this conversation made me think of.
Amen. And I wish you had told me that a long time ago. In the airline industry, there's a whole group that's called OR, which I think is the smartest department in any major department. It's called, or any major corporation, called Operations Research. And the biggest thing we worked on at American Airlines way back then was called OSO, which is off schedule operations. So, what happens if a pilot is sick, or there's a weather pattern, or we have a leakage, or we have the instrumentation malfunctions, or something like that? The plane still lands. It might take off a little bit late, but there's all kinds of backup systems. So, the key to OSO, there's a strike or something happy, fuel prices go up, is that we have graceful failure. So graceful failure means if something bad happens, there's a backup. So there's backup instrumentation, there's a backup avionics, there's a backup process if your primary airport isn't serviceable, you move to a secondary airport, right? When you fly, these 787s or 737s can fly so far. The FAA has a rule where you have to be able to fly to your destination and have enough fuel to fly for, I think, another hour and a half and circle that other destination for some amount of another hour and a half. So even though technically a 737 can fly from New York LaGuardia to London Heathrow, they don't do that because it can't fly that extra amount. So the idea of graceful failure is if something bad happens, you already have a backup plan. So if a co-founder or one of your key employees, they're sick or they're incapacitated or what, or you're just scaling so fast that you need to have multiple people who know how to do that role, then you're taken care of. So my friend Ali Awad, who you've seen in these rooms, he says always have at least two people who can do the function, even if there's only enough work just for that one person or even part time. And I found that to be huge, is having the backup too. Plus, nobody can hold you hostage. If you have just one engineer, how do you really know? You're a fat man getting a shoe shine. You don't really know. So when you have at least two people who can do that role, there's a level of integrity and I don't want to say honesty, but just knowing that someone else can step in and help if you need it. And that forces you to have the discipline to have your systems documented so that the company can function without you, which is the whole point of having a business, to be able to replace yourself, right? Like, Jeffrey, what would happen if for some reason you needed to take care of some situation and you couldn't work as the CMO of paw.com for 90 days? What would happen?
Oh, I'd be disappointed, but the company would survive.
So
Yeah,
I'd ask
there's a
each of you
there's a whole
guys.
team.
Yeah, just like Jeffrey has, he's got backups. And you don't have to be a huge company to have the infrastructure to be able to do that. It could be you consulting. It could be you with the side project. You want to think about what is it that you do? Can you document the process and document it so well that someone else can do it for you? If you decide that you don't feel like doing that anymore, it can still continue to produce residual income for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found it valuable. I'd love to hear stories that you have to share, and maybe you're reading this on startup.club. Reach out, let us know your feedback. We're always learning from everyone else and learning whatever topics you guys care about.
Yeah, I think, Dennis, we're learning some topics encourage more engagement from the audience, and some topics people sit back and listen. I hope in either case you're getting value from these discussions. I certainly do, and always look forward to the Coach U show. I always come away with it inspired and learning. And even tonight, I'm going to be thinking a lot about RAF. I'm going to be thinking a lot about that project, things I could have done differently back then, and things I'll do differently going forward. So it was a good discussion. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Take care, and remember, go to startup.club, sign up for our mailing list to be kept informed of everything going on here on Startup Club in Clubhouse. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week, next Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Coach U Show. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jeffrey.